Hi everyone, it's Katie, and today I'm really excited because I am finally doing Imogen Walters' Oracle Obsessed tag. Now she did this back in April, but April, May, I don't know, it seems to be a bit of a tough time of year for me, the last 2 years, so I wasn't really around on YouTube much that period, April, May, June, I don't think. So it's kind of been on my list of videos that I wanted to do, and I just decided, bugger it, I'm going to do it today, even if I am 6 months late. So this is basically just a tag all about Oracle decks and about the Oracle decks that I have and the ones that I love and the ones that I use a lot and what I think of Oracle decks and the difference between Oracle and Tarot and all of that good stuff. I feel like I've been talking a lot about tarot lately, and it's just a fact of my life that I go through phases of using Oracle or Tarot a lot more than the other, and for the past, I don't know, good 6 to 8 months, it's very much been Tarot for me. So whilst my Oracle decks have taken a bit of a step back, I still adore them, I still love them, and they are still, I still use them regularly, just less so than Tarot. But anyway, that's enough of a ramble. Let's get into the tag. So our first question is, what was your very first Oracle deck? Now, mine is a deck that I don't have anymore, and I do rather miss it. It was the Aboriginal Spirit Oracle, I think. I'll put a picture here for you. I got it when I was in Bateman's Bay several years ago, and it came in a little wooden box. It was very cute, and I really enjoyed it, and I used it a lot. For the little while when I first bought it. Used it for me and mum and my aunt and my grandmother. It was so much fun. But then, I don't know, about a year later I just stopped using it. Question 2 is, what's your current favourite Oracle deck? My current favourite is one that I've just recently done a review on. It's the Saltwater Reading Cards by none other than the fabulous Laura Bowen. I love this deck so much. It's up there probably in my top 5 or so favourite Oracle decks ever. And now that the weather's getting a bit warmer, it's definitely a deck that I've been pulling out. Oh, my nails match it almost perfectly, don't they? This is just like a colour and a vibe that I just really dig this time of year. So I'm really getting down with the beautiful Saltwater Reading Cards. And I just love it. It just feels so fresh and alive. And in case you didn't see it or you're interested, just the colours. I will leave a link in the cards and in the description box of my review that I did recently, and I walk through the entire deck because I just wanted to show every card because it's just so gorgeous. Question number 3 is, what is your most used deck? And I'm going to take this to mean ever. And I kind of have 2. But I'm going to show one because the second one comes up in a question later. So it's probably the Enchanted Map. It's not one that I use all the time, but I go through phases where it's almost the only deck that I use, for months at a time. So it is one that I've used a lot. And I did a review on this deck along with the larger book that this deck is based on. Which is called The Map by Colette Baron Reid. And I loved the imagery of this deck. I always loved it, but it wasn't until I read that book that I really understood the whole purpose of this deck. Like these keywords, I struggled to read with it. I didn't really understand what it was trying to achieve and what these keywords meant. I didn't get it until I read the book, and then it just made so much sense. So if you like this deck and you're kind of struggling to connect with it, I definitely recommend reading The Map by Colette Baron Reid. She just explains the whole metaphor of the map, the whole analogy, a whole lot more clearly and more effectively in the book, and much more thoroughly, obviously. It's a book. Question 4 is, what is your least used deck? Now, I recently did a video on the decks that I own and that I don't really want to get rid of, but that I don't use. And I spoke about quite a few Oracle decks in that. But I'm going to talk about one that I really do intend on keeping, but that I'm still kind of struggling to work with a whole lot. That's obviously the Oracle of the Dreamtime by Donny Hackerson. I think I spoke about in my video of the decks that I don't use. I think overall, like, this is a pretty chunky, hefty book, and all of the cards have really special, meaningful stories that go along with them. And I haven't read the book, and so I think a big part of me feels like I need to read the book first. But yeah, so this is a deck that I haven't really used at all. I've done 2 draws with it since I did that video, kind of at the end of readings, just for myself. And I did enjoy reading through the stories and the messages that went along with those cards. So it has been used since that video. It hasn't remained unused, but still, as I said, 2 1-card draws is the extent of my work with this deck so far. Question 5 is, how did you learn how to read oracle cards? I think in large part, I'm going to show you this deck for a reason. This is the Flowers of Love Oracle. I was using oracle decks especially when I was still learning tarot, and often tarot, when you're learning it, can feel quite overwhelming. So I very often used oracle decks instead for myself. And so it was just a process of working with them on a daily basis. I did daily draws, I did 3-card draws. I often did use spreads back then. But I was very much tied to the guidebooks. Not entirely, but, you know, quite a bit. But it was this deck that really kind of encouraged me to let go of the book. This deck does come with a little book. And this deck is pretty structured, actually. The different colours correspond with basically different suits, or they're more stages of love or developing a relationship, the different stages that happen in that process. And they're also associated with different myths. And so we have the keyword and the name of the flower, and in the background the scene is actually like directly from a myth that has been associated with the flower. And it's all very interesting, but often I found reading the meanings in the book that it seemed like they made jumps that didn't work for me in terms of how they got to certain meanings. And so when I was using it, I love this deck. I think it's beautiful and I had a lot of fun working with it. But whenever I was going to the book, it just seemed to come to the opposite conclusion, or a really illogical one, at least to me. And so that was kind of my first realization that maybe I was right, at least, you know, for me and my circumstances, and it wasn't the book that had all the answers. And so then I would still read through the myth part of the book, because the book provides the myths and then the interpretation. So I would still read through the myth part just to get to know the deck better, but then I would close the book and come to my own understanding of the card and what it meant for me in that reading. And so that was kind of, it was a kind of push off the ledge, this deck, and that kind of really got me going with just reading from my intuition. I didn't really trust myself very much, but the more that I did it, the more I realized it was working, and I was getting a lot out of it. And when I read for other people with this deck, mostly, you know, just my family at that time, especially my mum, you know, stuff was coming through that was just right and helpful and useful. So yeah, I think this is one of the first cards actually that really got me thinking about this stuff, about maybe the book doesn't have the answer that I need, maybe that's in me. Question 6 is, what do you use oracle cards for? The key ways that I use oracle are kind of the pretty standard ways. Either as a daily draw, I like to draw 1 card and I'll kind of keep it out on my desk, and try and really focus on the energy and help it direct my day. Or I'll use it by drawing a card at the end of a tarot reading, to kind of, I don't know, cinch it all together and give like a clear message that I can take away in that moment. I also just did a video on using oracle cards for mindfulness, so that's another thing that I do. I use oracle cards in lots of different ways. Question 7 is, how do you read the cards? Guidebook, intuitively, a bit of both. I guess that really depends on the deck. For example, these two. This is the little Floret Oracle, which I've done like a walkthrough of. and it's just such a gorgeous little oracle deck that is put together using the art of J.J. Granville. And I bought this to go along with my Fantastic Menagerie, which is also based on the artwork of J.J. Granville. But this little baby doesn't come with a guidebook at all. So this is all about intuition. Although I also like to look up the flower. Often, not all of them, but a lot of them are named after the flower that's depicted. So sometimes I'll look up the flower and have a bit of a read after I've done the reading and learn a little bit more, because I find that that helps me develop a connection with the deck going forward from there. But then also other decks I don't use in the same way in readings. A good example would be one of my favourite oracle decks of all time, probably my second favourite oracle deck, is the Goddess Oracle by Amy Sophia Marashinsky and Harani Anto. I did a review of this deck about a year ago, but I don't really use this deck as a reading deck per se. It's beautiful, but I much more use this deck as drawing a card for the day or the week. The guidebook is absolutely essential to my experience of this deck, just with the nature that I choose to work with it. In part because the guidebook is so damn amazing, really. And also because oracle decks, I don't think, just have to be divinatory. For me, this deck is a great example of an oracle deck being a tool for learning. Like, this gives me an opportunity to learn about different goddesses from different cultures in a new way. So that's like 50% of what this deck is for me, is learning about a mythology and a goddess. And so in that way, this book is essential. Also, just it's beautifully written and has poetry and ritual ideas and everything. So, I mean, I use different decks in different ways. But in general, for oracle decks, I do tend to enjoy using the guidebooks if they're available. Actually, another good example of that would be the Wisdom Keeper's Oracle. I love this deck as well. It's one that I don't use too often just because it is quite heavy in terms of its messages, but it is definitely one that I enjoy sitting with the book for, because there is so much in there. It's almost a waste not to use it because it's all gold. So I don't know, for me, I use a bit of both depending on the circumstances, depending on the reading, but for my daily draws, things like that, I really enjoy going through the process of reading the book. That's part of the fun, that's part of the enjoyment for me. Question 8 is, do you use spreads? And no, not really. Not with oracle decks anyway. I absolutely do with tarot. I'm very much a spread lover with tarot. But for oracle, I tend to just draw one card, either for the day or to round up an oracle a tarot card reading, or I'll draw 3. That's about as spready as I get with oracle decks, to be honest. Often as a with and without advice. I think that is just such a great, easy, but effective and useful 3-card spread with and without advice. Or I guess I do use spreads in the sense that sometimes with some readings, I use an oracle card with a tarot card in the same position in a spread. So I might draw 3 tarot cards and then I'll draw 3 oracle cards that correspond with each of those positions along with the tarot card. But other than that, no, not really. There's very few occasions where I would use a spread just for an oracle reading. Question 9 is, do you mix oracle cards with other divination systems? I guess I've already answered that. Yes, I do with tarot, fairly regularly, not all the time, but regularly. But I don't use any other divination system, so just tarot. Question 10 is, in your opinion, what makes for a great oracle deck? Well, I have a few kind of opinions and thoughts on this, and I thought it might be helpful to take a look at some of my favourite and most used decks. These are all decks that I feel like really tick a lot of boxes for me, and as a result, I love them and I use them a lot. Now, what all of these decks have in common is a great guidebook, to differing degrees. I mean, I've already shown you the Goddess Oracle, which has quite a thick, extensive book where you get, 2 to 4 pages on each goddess. The Wisdom Keeper's Oracle, however, you only really get about a page, but it's really thoughtfully put together and it's really effective. And to me, I don't really like to have too much information most of the time. A lot of the time, I mean, it makes sense with the goddesses because the goddesses have their own mythology as well as the meaning to the card. But some guidebooks, I feel like, go on for 4 pages about one deck, one card. I don't know. I don't really love it when an author just kind of goes on and on and on. So I really like this, that we have simple card images, which are really, really beautiful and effective. Really love this card. And corresponding, just a 1-page, but it's really useful. It's empowering, but it's also productive. It's great. It's just an effective, useful, helpful sort of little message. I really love Laura Bowen's guidebooks. I mean, I love her decks, but I really like the guidebooks too. And a big part of why I like Laura Bowen's guidebooks so much, and her decks, but her guidebooks, is because I feel like they balance really well. They talk about the animal or whatever is depicted in the card. So I like that, and then she kind of goes into how that connects to a message, and then kind of really specifically gives you a clear direction in terms of what you can do, what this card is telling you. I like that. Again, it's not too much information, but it's plenty, and she uses this space and her words really intentionally. I really like that. The other thing I will say is Laura Bowen does this really well. A lot of Oracle's decks do this really well, but not all of them do. I absolutely need a connection between this meaning and the image, and if you're going to make a book, I want to know explicitly what that is. Laura does that really beautifully in her books. I mean, I have a couple of decks that don't do that, and I've still connected to them, so I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, but that is something that I always really, really get excited about. And that makes the whole experience of working with the deck and the book together, it makes it so much more enjoyable and productive. I guess this is kind of on the topic of cultural appropriation, but not explicitly. I guess if I'm going to be buying a deck, especially now more so than it used to be important to me, but it's important to me to understand or know a little bit about the author. Especially with more themed decks. Not necessarily that, you know, they have to fit a specific criteria, but at the very least that the deck is coming from an authentic place, that they haven't just decided that they like a certain type of artwork or a certain pantheon that they've never worked with, they've never understood, and they've just decided to kind of use that style. That never feels good to me, and I don't think that translates to a usable, accessible, interesting, deep deck experience. So that is something that's important to me. Question number 11 is, what do you feel are the differences between tarot and oracle cards? So I've decided to bring in my trusty Osho Zen for you to look at while I'm talking about this, because I don't think that there is a better deck. So many people say that this is an oracle deck, not a tarot deck. And I totally disagree with that. I appreciate that some people might use this more as an oracle, but as far as I'm concerned, it follows the tarot system pretty damn well. And there's certainly decks out there that I think stray more from the system, such as the Dreams of Gaia, which people very much, strongly advocate for fitting into the tarot category. And I think that Dreams of Gaia is a tarot deck too. I'm not saying that it's not, but if anything, I think this is more of a tarot deck than the Dreams of Gaia is. To me, a tarot deck is the 78 card system with 4 suits, with an ace and the courts and, the mages. And I know that some decks deviate from that, and some will add a card or some will change the suits or whatever, and that's largely what this deck has done. But at its heart, the cards still essentially have much of the traditional meaning, just through the lens of Zen, of Osho. I think what's interesting about tarot is that even though the core has stayed largely the same, there's still been plenty of changes over the years. The definition of tarot isn't 100% rigid. Tarot has made changes over the years, even in terms of how we interpret cards. We're definitely much more in the psychology era of tarot in many circles, in many respects. But yeah, those are my brief thoughts. Tarot to me is basically the 78 card with the structure that we know and love, but I'm willing to be reasonably flexible on that. Especially, I think it's great that creators are willing to kind of explore and push the boundaries of tarot a little bit. I think that only adds to our experience and our collective journey with tarot. Question 12 is, do you have any super unusual or unique decks? I do. I have a couple, but I think the two that I'll show you is this one that I've spoken about before. It's the Oracle de Mirrors, which I don't really know how to say, but my mum, as I mentioned, likes to get me oracle decks when she goes traveling, and she and Dad went to Paris for their 25th wedding anniversary a couple of years ago, and she came back with this deck for me, which, I mean, I'm sure maybe it's not very unique if you live in France and perhaps it's more available, but I've never heard anyone talk about it in our community, in our English speaking community here on YouTube. But I do think it's really cool, and I really like it. I think the artwork's very pretty. It's not one I really use, but it is one that I treasure. And I love the colours. It's so vibrant and pretty. And the next deck that I think I have, which is quite unique, is the Elements of Recovery cards, which was created by Beverly King. And when you purchase this deck, it's only like $20 or something. You get a PDF, which I have printed out. And basically, this deck is based on the 12 Steps program. So it's designed for, substance or alcohol abuse issues and working through those, but it's also really great for really any kind of addictive or obsessive tendencies or anything that's holding you back, like habits or anything like that. I think it's really, really well done, and it's really interesting. And the guidebook, there's not too much information, but it's certainly enough. I've written the keywords or the names of the card on here because that wasn't there, and I don't know, I just found that helpful, especially if I didn't really want to go to the book. I just wanted to use this as more a daily draw, which you certainly can as well. But for me, I mean, I'm 4.5 years sober, but it is still something that I struggle with. And then I'm also have other, as we all do, have other kind of crutches or habits that aren't necessarily healthy for us. I'm a big perfectionist, and not in a good way. I think that perfectionism is thrown around as I'm a bit neat and organized. No, real perfectionism can be really, really limiting and debilitating for many people. It certainly has done that to me in the past. So this deck has just been great for all of that sort of stuff. Question number 13, second to last, is what is your current deck crush? Now, I think from memory, Imogen, this was a deck that we wanted, that was at the top of our wish list, or that we were crushing on, like on Instagram or something. But there's only one oracle deck that I want, that I, at the moment anyway. I have one coming in the mail, but the only other deck that's on my wish list that's an oracle deck is the Victorian Flowers Oracle by Bobba Studios, mostly to go with my Fantastic Menagerie. I know I have the Floret Oracle, but it would be pretty cool to also have the Victorian Flowers. But I'm not in a rush to get that deck anytime soon. So I thought I would do my current deck crush that I have, that I've just been kind of playing with a bit lately. And that is the Wisdom of the Australian Animals, which is a deck that I did, that it was included in my decks that I don't use video. And I still haven't used it a lot, but I used it for just before my friend and I went on our last bushwalk, and I drew the echidna. That's why that was sitting on top. And the echidna in the book is all about, and it has keywords around the edge, is all about kind of pushing yourself, going out on adventures, pushing your boundaries, expanding, growing, all of that sort of stuff. And we went on our longest and hardest bushwalk yet, and we had the best time ever. We were both a bit nervous, so we embraced the energy of the echidna, and we had the best day ever. And so we've decided that this will be our bushwalk deck. And so every Tuesday, well hopefully every Tuesday when we go for a bushwalk, I'll draw a card from this deck. That's the plan. And so it's the first draw I've done with this deck, and it was lovely. I really enjoyed it. And the book is very simple. It's just one page. But it was great. It was exactly what we needed to hear, sweet and simple. And then question number 14, the last question is, if you could only use one deck from now on, what would it be? And if you've been following me for more than 5 minutes, you know the answer to that. It's the Dreamtime Reading Cards by Laura Bowen. This is my true love as far as oracle decks are concerned. Now, I would definitely miss several of my other oracle decks. I'm not going to pretend that I wouldn't. But if I absolutely had to make that choice, I wouldn't have to think too long or too hard about it. This deck is just the most wonderful, well-rounded, grounded, holistic, solid, powerful, personal, but also transpersonal deck I've ever worked with. It's just everything that I could want in an oracle deck, it offers me. And I know sometimes I sound like I'm just advertising for Laura Bowen. I've never met Laura. I bought her deck long before I connected with her online, and I mean, I basically just follow her on Instagram and like all her pictures. So, you know, I'm in no way affiliated with Laura. I'm just a big fan of her oracle decks. And I just really feel blessed and lucky and grateful to have found them and connected with them, especially this one. I just think it's so special, and I just feel really honoured to be able to work with it. And yeah, it's just no other oracle deck really, at the end of the day, as much as I love them, no other oracle deck comes close. In terms of just giving me everything that I want, in terms of being really, really rich and meaningful for me when I need it to be. It's just a wonderful deck. So that is my response to Imogen's Oracle Obsessed tag, 6 months late. But I had a lot of fun with this tag, and I hope you enjoyed this video. It's always so fun to go through and really have a bit of a play with all the oracle decks, all the cards that you have, and think about the role that they play in your life and in your practice. So I've really enjoyed doing this. Thank you, Imogen, for this tag. I'll leave a link to Imogen's channel below. She's totally fabulous, and in fact I included her in my October favourites. I love her channel so much. But that is all from me for today. This video is already going to be plenty long. But if you have any comments or questions about the decks that I've shown or the answers that I gave, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. And if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I am making 2 videos every week at the moment, which is heaps of fun. So I would love to see you around more. And until next time, guys, so much love. Bye.